Aaron's asking, how do you all compare to Rackspace? Well, it's really, again, kind of a, not to sound like a high school geometry or algebra teacher, but it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. SOS provides a combination of a software as a service as well as a platform as a service. So the platform as a service is that all the NOC services are in-house, our hardware that we own and monitor and manage too. And then the software as a service is a combination of that plus having online backup services going to run on a regular basis and backup information for you. So it's kind of hard to understand that, but when we get more into the pricing of our program, I think that'll make maybe a little more sense. Another question from Will. In some offsite backups, we create a complete backup on an external drive and then upload that offsite to the backup service. Is this the same thing for you? It does save time and cost. Absolutely. The big difference with us and the services that we have listed here is that a lot of these services and a lot of other ones that you may be familiar with require some sort of hardware purchase where you have to buy their hardware to use as a quote-unquote staging machine or a staging server. Well, we're a software company. We don't really care what hardware we're using. I mean, we build software to work on a Windows platform. So you get any Windows black box together, load it up with RAM and enough free space to handle what you're putting on there, and then absolutely that's how we're going to work it. And we have some articles that we'll go through, and then when we go through the demo, you'll see more specifically how that would work. Then another one from Patrick. Does the Exchange backup allow for recovery of very old emails? Does it ever purge or delete? No, our system doesn't purge or delete. Oh, another question from Vitor about your iPhone app. Can it be rebranded as well? We have a neutral brand offering for our iPhone and Droid applications. So it just comes up as not SOS, but also not specifically Vitor's backup. For someone who only needs to back up data files and not email, SQL, etc., what is the real advantage of Server Save? Well, they're still using a system, and you could still have a system recovery. And it's all about restore time objective and restore point objective. And it's about a combination of services that allow for true backup solution. So when you look at a true backup solution, you're not just talking about an image-based backup or a file and folder-based backup. You're not talking about just a backup locally or off-site. It's truly a combination of all of those. Otherwise, you don't have a solution and you have a single strategy. So the advantage would be if somebody steals her machine or she drops it, you know, whatever it gets, burns and immediately gone, then she can boot up an image on a new piece of hardware very quickly. So her restore time objective would be very fast. And restore point objective would also be subjective to her backup schedule, but it could be fast as well. The other option, if you didn't have Server Save and you weren't taking a full image of a system, is that you would have to just recover all the data files, which would still be pretty common, especially at an individual workstation or user basis. But that's the advantage, is you're covered in all instances of data loss versus a majority of them or some of them. How long is the retention period, or is that based on your backup plan, backup data, and retention data size? A good question, and this also goes with your question earlier about do we purge data if an account is canceled. So the SOS policy is that once data is backed up to the cloud, we do not purge or delete it at any point. It's something that only the user would be able to do. The only time that SOS actually deletes the data is after an account is canceled, and that's because the cancellation's pretty explicit in I don't want this anymore. So what happens is the account's canceled, and then it'll be queued up to be purged at the next purge cycle, which goes in 60-day cycles.
Patrick asked, so it could be used as an archive. Do users have access or only admins?
There's only one level of access, so either you have access to the information or you don't. So the users don't need access to run backups. You can install the backup, set it up as a Windows service, and it'll run in the background, and the user never needs to have the password, and then you would be able to control it that way. That's a common way of going about it. But additionally, we have a lot of people who use the file and folder backup and give the account to an individual user. And they set it up for them, of course, but they give them access because the mobile access to backed up data is very valuable. Think about all the small little requests that you may no longer have to perform when it comes to individual file recovery. Or when you're talking about salespeople, they're off-site, they're running around all the time trying to get things done. How many deals are delayed or lost because they didn't have access to specific information? I myself at football games this last NCAA season talked with friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, and they want to know what I'm up to, so I pull up my backup account on my iPhone, and I'm able to pull up different documents, especially things that wouldn't necessarily be in a storage service like SOS Collaborate or Dropbox or Box.net. But it was in my backup set, so I just searched for it, and I previewed it if I wanted to show them a picture, and then I just shared it to them so you could see it later. All right, Oracle support, how about MySQL? Yeah, sure. It really doesn't matter. You'll see how it works. You take ImageStream or Image Creator, and you select a volume that you want to back up, and it creates an image of that volume, and then it recovers that image.
William Taylor says military-grade security encryption value.
256-bit AES before transfer over a 128-bit SSL, and then we store an additional 1024-bit AES before we replicate to a geographically separate data center. If you specifically ask for data to remain in Canada, there is no geographic redundancy. It does stay in Canada.
And Dimitri has a couple questions. Can you be used as an offsite SAN/DR site? I assume you mean disaster recovery. And if so, how do snapshots and provisioning and refitting, etc. work?
Dimitri, I wouldn't recommend our service as a off-site SAN. It doesn't really work that way. The backup and storage are inherently different designs. Backup, you're trying to write many times but read very few, right? Like you don't want people getting in there too often. But you want to be able to back up as quickly as you can so you can have a good restore point objective. So you'd certainly want to back up all your information on a regular basis, but you wouldn't want to rely on your backup as a offsite SAN. It's not what it's designed for. And we'll go through snapshots and provisioning and how that works in the demo.
William asks, when the internet goes down at the client, does the backup run on the local machine or server and then uploaded when connection is restored?
Well, we have resumable transfer in all of our products, so the backup will stop and then it'll resume once the internet connection comes back.
Patrick says, does it handle open files when ImageStream is used?
Yes, and that's what we mean by a transactionally consistent backup. A crash consistent program versus a transaction consistent program. So a crash consistent program means it's going to be consistent with what would happen in a crash, which is, let's say we have a database and we're transferring $1 million from Will to Dimitri. Okay, so in that transaction there are two things that are happening. We're taking $1 million out of Will's account and we're putting $1 million into Dimitri's account. In a crash, boom, it happens right in the middle of that transaction. Well, transactions only go in pairs, and it's not stored data. Thanks. Dimitri says, thanks, Will. And Will says, other way around, Dimitri to Will. Either way, neither of you has that $1 million anymore if a crash were to happen right in the middle of that, or if a crash consistent backup were to happen in that. And that's usually what you get with cheaper services that don't really specialize in this sort of thing. You get a crash consistent backup. A transaction consistent backup set will actually negotiate with the programs that are running and say, hey, program, you got anything going on right now? And the program will come back and say, yeah, let me finish up. And then it'll pause. In that pause, our system will take a snapshot and then say, okay, you're good to go, program, and then the database, whatever program it is, will continue. All that happens within milliseconds. So that pause isn't affecting your operations at all. It's literally a 3 to 5 second pause that happens, if that.
Randy says, if I have a large backup, how do I retrieve my data quickly?
We do have a few options for that. Well, first is the strategy of having local backups available. Let's say your local backups are in place and it's part of your backup solution, but the whole dang place burns up. So you go out, buy new hardware, and you call SOS, and you say, SOS, all my stuff just burned up. I need you to send me my information as quickly as you can. We can recover the information for you using basically the same process, just faster pipes. But because of the security, and those of you with high security needs clients will appreciate this, because of the security, we cannot and do not just go into the data center and pull drives. It doesn't work that way. However, if you do have a large client and you want us to be able to pull drives and drop ship them to you, we do have that service available. Basically amounts to you leasing hardware in our data center from us directly, and then that way it's only yours. And so if you really need it, we will literally go in there, pull the drive, and ship it to you. All right, I think we're ready to start getting into a demo.
Yeah, I think so. We have some information on the competitive landscape and what some of our competitive solutions sell for, which would be really interesting to you when you go talk to your partner specialist about pricing. But I think we should just move right on through it.
Well, let's follow up with, we'll go back through this after we go through what our system can do. Okay, so I'm actually going to pull up a VM, just a Server 2008 box R2. It's been, as this loads up, it's been terrific to see that so many of our partners that have signed up since we really launched this whole white label program in 2009 that were using Zenith and Backup Exec and other services to get the images created, and then using our service to back up the site, have been so excited to see that we finally added an image creation program to our service and allows them to do this purely through SOS. It's at the time that it saves in training and in just managing the different relationships you have with vendors is worth it alone, let alone that it's awesome. So we find that not only are we typically offering exactly the same, we're offering more and at a much more affordable price point. Okay, so let me see this load up. So I'm going to boot up the server save executable here. Well, let me wait while this server is loading up here. Oh yeah, and to follow up with Dimitri and Will's epic of $1 million, with our system, Dimitri still gets the $1 million. Yeah, real quickly, let me load up our website that you can look at. Playing favorites again. So if you go to our main website, we have some information there. So the SOS Server Save page, you can take a look at what we got here for you. Also, if you go to resellers, you get to look at our program and what's available here. It really gets into what we have. The presentation you can actually take a look at now. Let me see, web integration. So you have some different templates you can choose from, but actually our demo site, managedonlinebackup.com, I've uploaded it here, so if you download the program deck, that's the deck we just